Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson on our new set.
Yeah.
It's our new set. And then we're going to take a break from the set because we're going to record at the Combine this week.
This is true. It's going to be a brief interlude into the new set. But look at this, like fancy mics and stuff.
How do you feel? Do you feel comfortable? You're getting used to the...
Yeah, these are more comfortable chairs than the high seats.
That's true. These are the regular office chairs that we have. They're pretty good.
Now, I've broken this one a little bit, so it doesn't recline the way I need it to.
I like to limit my reclining.
I don't like to put any limit on reclining.
You'd be off camera if you did that.
I don't have a problem with that.
I like it. I'm comfortable.
It's a nice table too.
It's a very nice table, and I think people are going to enjoy it.
And we can actually look towards each other.
Yeah, I can give you that look like
in that weird angle.
Rugby again.
Yeah, I got a good comment today.
Wrap it up.
Tweeted it already.
We're on a tight schedule today. We're previewing the scouting combine, and then we're hitting the road. We're getting right on the road, and we're going to Indianapolis. So
to the scouting combine.
We got a hard out. Yeah, to the scouting combine. I don't want it in Vegas because Vegas isn't 2 hours away by car.
We couldn't drive that quickly.
No, we probably couldn't bring 28 people like we are this year.
You couldn't act as an Uber driver to a former NFL GM, which is what you're doing today.
Listen, this is a business arrangement, okay? I have a very high-end business meeting this week, and that is what this week is all about at the Scouting Combine. We're going to preview the overall Combine, what we're doing there, what PFF does there historically, and then also talk a little bit about the players.
But it's very up in the air this year because they've changed the structure. All the workouts are now in the evening, so everybody's traditional, let's say, meeting time.
Yeah.
Drinking.
It doesn't matter. So
has been thrown into chaos.
The other part is the live show is Thursday night.
Yes.
We're going head-to-head with the QBs and receivers. It doesn't matter.
We are.
You're still going to be there at the tin roof. Well, look, we'll break the news. We'll break the best 40s and all that stuff.
Yeah. The important thing is that we have the largest hand measurement of anybody that will be on the field that day.
It's true.
You and your giant mitts, certainly bigger than Burrow's 9 inches.
No. Burrow cannot compete.
Even Lewerke.
Tua's got a bigger left hand than right hand.
Well, yeah, he's been working it out.
You stretched out just the left hand, apparently.
Well, why would you do both?
That's a good point.
For those Mahomes random off-hand passes?
Just for symmetry?
Nah.
Anyway, Combine week.
Yes.
So let's get all the announcements out of the way. Tin Roof, housekeeping. Thursday night, Tin Roof, 7 to 9, maybe later. Based off what we're trying to do, we might be there till midnight. Does Tin Roof know that?
No, and I think they might have a problem with that.
Doesn't matter. It's going to be such a good show. We might be there all night. We have guests lined up. We're still waiting to line up other guests. We'll have more information over the next couple days. If you're in Indianapolis, the only place to be on Thursday night, if you can't get into the Combine to watch the players run, which I don't think you can.
A few people can.
A few people
and
can.
There's some...
But if you can't get in there, you're going to just listen.
Sorry.
You're going to be at the Tin Roof watching us.
Yes.
Okay? We might actually have an NFL player that's not too pleased with us at the moment.
Yeah. That's
soft.
risky.
He's a soft yes, so we don't want to announce it yet.
No, he became a hard yes. You keep saying that.
Are we allowed to announce it?
Soft became hard. What? That's what happened. I don't know that we should announce it yet because we don't have the flyers printed or anything.
Let's just say there's an NFL player not too pleased with us who's going to be there.
Yeah. The other point about this is you don't need tickets. Just show up.
Oh, yeah. Just show up. Have some fun.
Ticketed,
buy a drink. Enjoy yourself.
You're good.
Actually, the first drink, I believe, is on Chris Collinsworth.
Yeah.
I believe that's what we were trying to do.
Have you got your order planned?
Don't quote me on it. Yeah, I'm going to get the best water that they have.
The best water.
The very best water. I got to stay hydrated during this thing.
You do.
All hydration. Anyway, so the show, Tin Roof, Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Also, today, PFF.com. We just unveiled a great new homepage, so you can navigate all of our beautiful articles and content. That's the first thing. But the most important thing is PFF subscribers, Edge or Elite, the draft guide. The update is there. We only had the Senior Bowl guys in first. Now there's 250 players added to the draft guide. It's actually the second version out of 4. There'll be a post-combine, and there'll be a post-pro day. So this is spectacular, top-notch work by Mike Renner and the team.
And it's easy to find right now on the new homepage. Top right, featured tools. It's the second thing down just behind the free agent rankings. And the other way to find out more of Mike Renner's analysis, 2-for-1 drafts, their podcast, Renner and Austin. You might want to listen at 0.8 speed because those two both talk really fast. But the analysis
Most
in there...
people flip the podcast the other way so they can consume it quicker.
That one you need to dial down, not up. But those two guys fire through a ton of prospects. They're pretty fun. They also butcher the occasional intro the same way we do. So
Oh, it's great.
it's good fun.
I watched that one over and over again. So 2 for 1. Mike did his rounds. He was on the PFF forecast.
Did you know that podcast is currently ranked ahead of ours in iTunes?
Yeah,
7 spots.
we complained about this on the last episode.
7 spots. What the hell?
That changes daily, though.
I haven't looked.
Their
at
algorithm's all messed up.
Okay.
Nobody knows their algorithm. Anyway, so go check it out. PFF.com, the draft guide. I'll be reading it the entire drive to Indianapolis.
Should you not be driving the entire drive?
Maybe I'll have the GM just read it to me.
I think you should. Yeah. Look, as long as
Secret
I'm dragging your ass to Indy, sit over there and read me the draft guide.
Read some scouting reports. I want Mike's pros and cons read to me. Anyway, I was a big part of the first draft guide, and the second and the third and the fourth. This is the best iteration we've ever had.
Way to make it all about you, Steve.
I'm trying to give credit. People have made what I did so much better. Anyway, go check that out. Scouting Combine, we're heading down there. I mean, we're going to finish this podcast and get on the road. We're on our way to Indianapolis. We'll be there all week, so be sure to keep up with all the social media channels, all the content at pff.com. What's your favorite part about Indianapolis, Sam? What are we doing down there? A couple different lines of business.
Other than the steak dinners.
Yeah, I'm there for the steak.
Yeah.
The St. Elmo's shrimp. I mean, we'll be there. I'm not. We can't promote like our party.
no.
People broke into our party one year.
That'll be bad. So Indy's interesting because, first of all, let's talk about why the combine matters generally, right?
Yeah.
Now, the workouts matter to an extent, but a lot of them are, honestly, the biggest purpose of that week is not the workouts for almost anybody. It's, interviews. You get to sit down with these guys for the first time, actually talk to them for 15 minutes, get a handle on them. And, we've talked before about how you think that shouldn't be a thing, but you spend 5 minutes talking to some players and you're like, for good or bad reasons, this is an important part of the puzzle.
I think figuring out how to weigh those things is important.
Yes.
You've got the grit tests and all that stuff, which might be overrated, but you got to know.
But simply talking to somebody for 5 minutes can give you a pretty clear indication of either extreme, right?
Do you want to follow up? Do you want him to be one of your top 30 visits?
This guy's really smart. This is a good thing. And this guy is a stone cold moron. We might not want this guy on our team. Whatever, right? Just having that experience, I think, is important. The medicals are also huge. Tua this year is obviously a huge thing for him. He needs to go in there, get that hip checked out, get the ankles checked out, make sure that he passes from a medical point of view so that every team can go, okay, we can actually evaluate this guy going forward now.
Do you think I was going to ask you, what do you think the biggest storylines are going to be coming out? Now, a couple years ago, there was Reuben Foster in Alabama. He gets sent home from the combine, has, per our sources, one of the worst interviews he's ever seen at the scouting combine. And, so that's like an unexpected story. The Tua stuff has to be a story, right? I mean, somebody's going to report on where he is in his rehab, how his hip is, how many teams have eliminated him from the board. Should we set an over-under? Oh, there's 12 teams that have eliminated him from the board. I mean, there's got to be a lot of that stuff coming out this week.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Tua's medical situation is one of the biggest stories of the combine, and that's something that is important through this week, is that everybody gets medically checked out and the board gets set that way.
Real quick, I want to have a deeper discussion as we get closer to the draft. Top of the draft, though, I did tweet out last week about the Washington Redskins should be in play for Tua. Now, a lot of that is based off of our deeper-rooted philosophy that you just continue to find not a quarterback, but the quarterback until you find him, right? Uncover every rock until you find him. Do you think Tua should be in play for the Redskins, who already have Dwayne Haskins, and the Lions, who already have Matthew Stafford, or do you think, or the Giants at 4, or do you think it has to be the Dolphins, the Chargers, the Panthers, and all those teams that are looking for quarterbacks? Should he be in play at 2, 3, and beyond?
Of those 3 teams you mentioned, the only one I think he should be in play for is the Lions. And honestly, given the situation they have there, I don't know that anyone in that building would be on board with that. So at that point, I think you're Dolphins and beyond.
Okay, we'll dive into it further as we get closer. Yeah. But I mean, just as a general idea,
I subscribe. Look, I think your intentions are good in this idea of just keep swinging a quarterback until you find one. I just think there's practicalities involved in that you can't just forget about based off whether it's the personality of the guy that's already in the building, whether it's the shitstorm that comes with it in terms of media of who's going to be starting, who's going to be in the battle, who had the better throw, and this,
I can answer those questions. I can do it.
All these things. I just think there's too much of a mess. Plus, there's a lot, like, players have some kind of leverage, right? You suddenly hire a guy's replacement a year after he got there. Like, those guys, I don't think are going to take that sitting down. They're going to agitate for trades or whatever. Like, I just think it's more complicated than just keep swinging. Though, in theory, I agree with you that that's what you should do.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up there. I think it's a fair discussion point.
Sure.
And, we heard the forecast guys earlier saying there's not a huge difference between Burrow and Tua. And I think that's fair when you use those 2 years sample sizes.
Right. So the last thing that's important to talk about,
Sorry, go ahead.
about why the combine is important before we even get to the workouts, are the week's worth of networking, talking, back channel discussions. Like, free agency is just around the corner. There's a ton of discussions that happen this week.
Trade talk, all of that.
Right,
yeah.
about trades, about free agents, about contracts, about where a guy might be going, all that kind of thing. So the idea that everybody relevant to the NFL landscape is in one city, a small city in one locale, get to network and talk, and like, that is a huge part of this week, completely independent, essentially, of what's going on in the workout.
That is the fascinating aspect of all this. You really have all of the important personnel around the NFL except Sean McVay in the same exact spot, because McVay's not going. He's going for like a day.
A day, yeah.
Rams and Broncos not sending as many people. You have everybody essentially within 2 blocks of each other for about a week, right?
And like 3 hotels.
About 3 hotels. Every hotel lobby is filled with varying degrees of important NFL people, however you want to define that. This is just before any of the workouts start. And then the after-hours establishments filled up with those who want to, take part in after-hours activities, usually the same group. I mean, it is a fascinating week and absolutely the pinnacle of essentially networking events. From a PFF standpoint, it's a good throwback, right? When we were just trying to find ourselves. 2012 was the first year I think I went, or 2013 was the first year I ever went. And we always tell the story. I mean, Neil and I went, and Brian Hall, who was our, new budding sales guy at the time, we just took turns being there. We had one room. We didn't have any meetings. We didn't know who we were going to meet with. And it just slowly evolved into us proving ourselves. That was our proving ground to NFL teams. And we have all these milestone moments where we sat down with coaching staffs and general managers and front office personnel. And when they hear what we do, they generally come across favorable. And before you know it, we had 8 teams and 12 teams and 15. And there was a point where we had to lock in our last one a couple years ago. And it was the combine where we did that. So there's a lot of good memories over the last 7 or 8 years of that progression and getting to having all 32 NFL teams as clients here at PFF.
Yep.
Now we're trying to advance that, big part of my role, advance that, making that even bigger. So big week.
So let's talk about the actual workouts. Why
Yes.
they matter, right? Now, the first thing is there's an extent to which they matter, right? Like, you shouldn't be drafting anybody off his 40 time alone. So I think, personally, I think the biggest and most important thing about the workouts generally is, one, it's not one drill. Like, you need to put them all together to get a picture of a guy's overall athleticism.
And that changes by position where you want to focus things.
Correct. But even just like a DK Metcalf, right? Blew off the doors in straight line things, had disastrous 3-cone numbers. Like, he was at either end of the extreme in like multiple different ways. So now it's like, okay, how do we put that together and get an overall picture of what he can do? Then there are other guys who, they might do extremely well or badly in a specific drill, but everything else is more over here on a different level. It's like, well, okay, this is more of an outlier than it is an indicator of what he's capable of, and actually his athleticism is somewhere over here. So the first point, I think, is you're not going off any single drill. You're trying to put like a composite together of what a guy's overall athleticism is. And then the second point is, I think it's more about meeting thresholds than it is being insane, So
Yeah.
the fact that a guy's an incredible athlete, depending on certain positions, is less important than a guy being an NFL caliber athlete. Like, if you're not an NFL caliber athlete based off this composite, now I think you have some problems.
Renner used
How
this.
high you are is not that important. I don't
Renner used this example last year. Now, Quinnen Williams didn't have the best
I need to go power
rookie
myself.
season. So Quinnen Williams didn't have the best rookie season, but it was actually a lot better than Rashawn Gary. And so when people were coming out of the combine last year, everybody was talking about Rashawn Gary ran this, and this, and he was a freak and whatever. And we were talking like a few tenths of a second different than, say, a Quinnen Williams relative to their position, right? So there's also this idea, like if a guy runs freakish times, don't overweigh the freakish stuff if it's just like a little bit better than, the baseline at his position.
Right.
So don't take that and then extrapolate it really so far forward that it's like all of a sudden this guy goes from like 5th best to 1st best because of this one time. I think the other part is the old double counting, right? Everybody knew John Ross was super fast on tape, right? He runs by people on tape. We see it. I'm going to write my scouting report that says, here's a deep threat speed receiver. And then he runs 4.22. All right, confirmed. Now, 4.22 is better than 4.25, 4.29, and 4.3, or whatever. Maybe you bump him up a touch, but not to the point where it's like, oh, I didn't know that John Ross was fast.
Right.
Fast guys run fast, right?
Then there's certain positions where I think being freaky athletic is more important than others. So edge rusher is probably the biggest one, right? Where it's like, okay, you've got all these guys tape, you've got the athleticism, you've got the PFF grade, you've got the production, but a Myles Garrett who has, freaky athleticism is going to bump himself up over a guy who has essentially the same level of production and comparable tape, but isn't quite the level of freaky athlete, because that is fundamentally going to be a help when you're going up against bigger, better athletes at the NFL level.
I want some speed receivers, man. That's what I want.
Well,
Today's NFL. I'm blinded by speed now.
So let's talk about one of the stories of the Combine week, which is Ruggs. Henry Ruggs has a shot, people say, to break the John Ross record.
So this is what I wrote down in my notes. Okay, so all the receivers are fascinating because we've already talked. There could be 4, 5, 6, 7 receivers named in the first round. Daniel Jeremiah said he had something, I think it was like 27 or was it over 40? He had some ridiculous amount of receivers just in the first 3 rounds, right? So the fact that, he does, and we, like, a lot of people are talking about these receivers. So this week will separate a lot of them, at least with regard to draft position. If you're a receiver who's really good and you run a 4.55 this week, even if you're still really good, you're probably going to drop because there's going to be a whole bunch of dudes running in the 4.3s. So as my notes, I wrote Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. Will there be separation between those two guys at wide receiver 1?
Probably. Well, yeah, in terms of.
So, and will Henry Ruggs at the end of this week be in wide receiver 1 discussion?
Who? I don't care what he runs. I don't think Henry Ruggs can run a time that puts him in wide receiver 1 discussion for me. But I think he can beat potentially John Ross's number. That's the fascinating
4.22,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the thing. Like, if he runs a 4.2, everybody's going to be like, whoa. We know he runs fast, but like John Ross moved up because he ran a 4.22. He wasn't the first wide receiver off the board, but he moved up because of it.
And that's the same thing, right? Is that I think Ruggs could move up, but I don't think he could be the number 1 receiver on the board. But there are people genuinely saying he could break 4.2. Like he could get into the 4.1 something. Now, I've been working on the basis over like the last 15 years that any number you hear that's 4.1 something is basically made up and a myth.
The Deion Sanders, Bo Jackson.
Right. Deion Sanders, Bo Jackson ran a 4.1. Like what? It's all.
I got to know what my stopwatch says.
It's all bull, right? But I didn't think anyone would break 4.24, and John Ross went out and did it.
So the thing about the electronic times, I think they're harder to cheat, and I think Indy is just a truer track than the stuff you see at pro days.
Sure.
So the thing I like about the comp, people have talked about, there are some new drills this year. People have talked about, like, let's change the drills. Let's have more football-specific drills. I stand by my previous take. I like that we have years of data on the same drills. Whether they matter or not is not for the combine, so to speak, to figure out. It's on the 32 NFL teams to figure it out.
Apparently
we have articles at pff.com right now breaking down what do these things mean. I like the consistency of the drills, knowing that you're going to compare them across generations and then figure out what to do with them. That's on you.
Apparently next year they are going to eliminate the bench press.
Why?
Because it has no purpose.
Yeah, I mean,
like
I'd be okay with that.
The guys with DMP little T-Rex
I'd be okay with losing the bench press.
And the guys with your arms suck.
I think all the other movement skill drills, I like the fact that you can compare 3 cones and 40s and all of the movement and the verticals and broads and all that stuff. I don't want to lose any of that stuff. It's not football stuff, but I think let's just compare in a vacuum and see what these guys are.
I don't even care that it doesn't mean anything. I just think it's fun. Like the idea that you get a kicker that can do 7 reps of like 225.
It is fun. Stephen
Paya. Kind of fun. Yeah, and then the guy like Stephen Paya going out there, even though he has dumpy little T-Rex arms, hammering out 50 reps or whatever. That's insane.
So this reminds me a little bit of, I think I saw Eric talking about it a couple weeks ago. It's like, people are talking about, like, what should you learn in school? Should you learn calculus and algebra and all that stuff? You know, people don't use it in the real world. And in my old age, Sam, I think I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter if you use stuff that you learned in school. It's kind of the process. It's the process of problem solving and learning and just putting the effort into getting better at something. I think there's something to that with, say, the bench press or whatever the. No, I'm not saying the bench press specifically, but whatever the things are that you're training for, right? You have to train for it. Like, you have to put the time and effort into training for that. And it goes back to that whole job interview process. Did you prepare for it? Did you do a good job? So even if you don't have to use it after, it's that whole process that you go through that I think is telling about the player.
See, I think the bench press one, though, I think you can get guys that are just fundamentally massively behind the 8 ball because their arms are long, right? Where I think that would be a good point is the Wonderlic. The Wonderlic basically bears no relevance whatsoever to on-field football IQ, let alone performance. But which is what it's designed to achieve, right? Is get you an idea of how smart the guy is, so you can see, okay, can he process? It's completely irrelevant to that. But if you go out there knowing that you were going to have to sit a Wonderlic for the last 5 months and you score a 4, like my 6-year-old could score a 4 on the Wonderlic. Like but
you don't want to score too high.
Well, whatever.
But then there's people that say we don't want corners to be too high because we want them to be better, just react and play.
You want them to be able to spell their own name. Like, if you can't
You don't know what the Wonderlic is.
I've taken a Wonderlic. You've taken a Wonderlic. We've all taken Wonderlics. My point is, if you knew that was coming and couldn't score higher than single digits, that's a problem.
I agree. So I think the preparation aspect of it, much like going through school and having to prepare and practice problems, whatever you're practicing and working on, I think there's something to that from a combine standpoint. So can we talk about a few players who I think it's a big week for in terms of combine, right? One, Ruggs, as we talked about, could potentially get into the 4.1s, could potentially break John Ross's record or whatever. He's got a chance to set crazy fast number. CeeDee Lamb, I think it's a big week for him. I'm curious to see what he runs because we said it when we were watching his tape. I've seen other people say it as well. It doesn't look fast, but it works, and he runs away from people. So what does that translate to? And that's one of those kind of questions, right, is when you see a guy run faster on tape or on the track, when his number is faster than the tape, what do you do with that? I think for Lamb, it's more, it would, if he runs, let's say he runs a 4.4, right? I think it would validate what you saw on the tape as opposed to leaving question marks. So now we look at his tape. Because it worked, but it looked slow.
But that's what I mean, right? But you look at his tape, and you can't look at his tape and say he's not fast because it works, right? He runs away from people. But it doesn't look right. So at least, like, if he comes out there and runs a 4.4, you would look at it and say, okay, fine, he is as fast. It just, for whatever reason, it looks weird, but it's functional. But if he comes out and runs like a 4.6 or a 4.7, like, now you're like, okay, well, now it doesn't look fast and it isn't fast. Now we have some questions.
I'm seeing over-under for CeeDee Lamb at 4.54. I think I've seen it in the 4.4s as well, but I'm seeing over-under at 4.54.
I would buy that.
So I think, despite, scouts have seen this, we've seen it, he doesn't move fast on film, but he runs away from people, right? As you said. If he runs a 4.5 or higher, I think there's going to be talk about him dropping. I think we're going to be talking about him in the 20s as a steal.
Well, if 4.54 is his over/under, I mean, if he goes over that, right? If he ends up in the 4.6s,
I think if he's anything over 4.5, and that's the fascinating thing about this stuff. If you run 4.49, it's like, oh, you're a 4.4 guy. If you run 4.5 or more, it's like, oh, he's a 4.5 guy. I mean, it is amazing how it plays in your brain.
To me, anything in the 4.5s for him is like an as expected, move on.
Right. So as long as we're sitting here a week from now and say, look, that was expected. Now, if he runs a 4.6, it's like, oh my gosh, how's he get open at 4.6?
If we're talking about anything in the 4.4s, it's like, wow, this guy's the number one receiver in the draft. If we're talking about anything in the 4.6s, it's does he really have the speed at the NFL level? And we're talking about 0.2 of a second total across the whole board.
I got to see other odds because I think I could have sworn I've seen him in the 4.4s, but the most recent thing that I'm seeing here is 4.54. So
who else have you got that it's a big week for?
So I think it's him versus Judy as far as like. Everybody's debating about the two of those guys as number one. I think Judy ends up running faster and has a better workout, and then people are like, oh, confirmed Judy over Lamb, whatever. I think that ends their debate. I wrote down Ruggs. I also think the other potential first-round receivers, Laviska Shenault's just weighed in at 227. Just a monster. I want to see his movement skills, the Colorado wide receiver. And then T. Higgins, the other guy from Clemson, who doesn't separate as well as some of these other guys, but has that incredible catch radius, ball skills, another first-round wide receiver. I think all the receivers, Jalen Reagor, all of these receivers have a chance to put on a show. But in this class, where there's so many that have a chance to go in the first 3 rounds, this will separate a lot of them.
Yeah, I think it will. I think the two guys that stood out at the Senior Bowl, Denzel Mims and Antonio Gandy-Golden, those are 2 sort of big, like athletic, raw receivers. Right? Both those, if they go out there and dominated the Combine the same way they dominated the Senior Bowl, I think that could start propelling those guys up boards, because it's like, well, these guys are raw, but wow, look at that athleticism.
So moving on to the offensive tackles, it's another position that's deep. You could have 4 or 5 first rounders, maybe more. I think 4 or 5 is probably that sweet spot. And then we found last year in our research at PFF, 3-cone actually matters a little bit when we talk about translating to the NFL. And then 3-cone, and I think workouts in general matter as far as draft position and giving guys opportunities. 3-cone's been a big part of the NFL thinks this guy can move. Therefore, it's a good thing, right? If a guy runs a good 3-cone. You have a guy like Jedrick Wills from Alabama, who looks like an absolute freak athletically on tape. I mean, he is so quick. I don't know if he, at 320 pounds, whatever he weighs in at, if he's going to move incredibly well. Andrew Thomas from Georgia, Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, Josh Jones, who we loved coming out of Houston, and then the monster Mekhi Becton, 6'7", 370 out of Louisville. I think those guys get separated this week a little bit by workouts as well.
I think those are definitely important things, or important guys.
Nobody wants to talk tackle workouts, but in this season of a lot of first rounders, there'll be movement among those guys.
Right, and at the workouts for tackles, it's not the 40, right? Who cares how fast a tackle runs a 40? You put on the right word, movement, right? It's how do these guys move? How do they actually get around the field with the various drills that are designed to sort of show that and highlight it? And that's the important thing for those guys, is which ones just have the best fluid movement skills that we can then match with the tape.
Do you have any other lists or storylines? Because I got a couple others.
Oh yeah, well hit yours.
So I want to see Chase Young. How much does he do, and how athletic is he?
Is he
just
in
put
that,
the stamp?
Right. Is he in that Myles Garrett category of athletic freak?
And then edge 2, the edge class isn't deep, but AJ Epinesa from Iowa. He reminds me of Trey Flowers. I just quote tweeted that this weekend after watching him a little bit. Austin Gale was posting some of his stuff. Wins with his hands, with power. He's about 6'5", 285. Is he going to be that Trey Flowers style, Carlos Dunlap size? If he has a really good workout, he could be the second edge defender off the board. Who steps up as edge? Because as you mentioned, that would be the position when you talk about broad jump, vertical, 3-cone, the change of directions, and the power drills for edge defenders. Those generally translate well and lead to draft position.
Yeah, I mean, there is a really strong correlation between, guys dominating the sort of all the various athletic drills for edge rushers and becoming good players. Now, it's not necessarily if they were bad college players, but if they were good college players and then match that up with the freaky athleticism, now you're talking about something special at the NFL level. It's not going to turn a guy who had no college production into a great NFL player most of the time, which is, again, the key to all this sort of stuff, right? It's bucketing players into where they should be based off A, the tape, B, the interviews, C, the medicals, D, the on-field workouts.
Right.
We think this guy is in this bucket. All of a sudden, one of these things doesn't match where it should be. Now we have to make a decision.
And then you have stuff like Orlando Brown. For all the things that we're talking about, one of the worst combines ever. He failed the test, didn't prepare for it, whatever happened. It was terrible, and he's become a pretty good player in the right system, run-heavy, system in Baltimore as a right tackle.
Well, we had that line on this podcast, is that he had the worst workout of anybody of the week, including Maurice Hurst, who got sent home with a heart condition.
Right.
So
it wasn't good.
But here's the key, right? So Orlando Brown presumably did about as bad as you could possibly do at the Combine, though we've no idea what his medical or his interview looked like, right?
Right.
In terms of workout, as bad as it could go. But you get a second shot. You can go back, you do your pro day, you can fix it. Now, his pro day was okay. It wasn't good, but it was not catastrophic.
He showed improvement,
right.
for
It
sure.
wasn't catastrophic the way his Combine was. So as much as, these things are not concrete. They're not set in stone, right? These are not, this is this guy, the end. we just talked, nobody has any idea what their schedule is, right? Because they've changed all the times, the workouts, everything is up in the air. Nobody has any clue what this week looks like until we get there. So I was asking you, are they still waking these guys up at like 5 a.m. to go take a drug test or whatever? Because they're working out until 11 p.m.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference is in schedule, but that's the other thing too. I like the uniformity of being in Indianapolis. Like every player has to deal with a lack of sleep and whatever they're doing nutritionally just to make sure that they weigh in and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean,
and then they run in the morning, and it's all similar. But it's challenging. Like you're not getting a great read on these guys because they're probably sleep deprived and tired and not in a great spot.
Yeah, I mean the pro day thing can cut both ways, right? It's they fixed their times, they fixed their workout from the combine. On the other hand, they did it in the cloistered environment of their own school where everything should be good, and that school's track might be might be a fast track.
They didn't wake up at 4 for a drug test and all that stuff.
So you can kind of read that a couple of different ways, but I think it's important to say that the times or the numbers at these workouts are not necessarily what this guy is.
Right. So a couple other defensive linemen I think it's important for. Derrick Brown of Auburn, Javon Kinlaw of South Carolina, another two very similarly sized, 6'5", 6'6", over 300 pounds. Both guys move pretty well. They're fighting to be the first interior defensive lineman off the board. I think there'll be some comparison between those two guys. And then the guy that we talked about on the podcast last week, Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. He's supposed to be this freak athlete that could play safety, that could play linebacker, that can rush off the edge, that could do all these different things. Want to see him move, see the change of direction stuff for him as well.
So a couple of questions somebody asked that I want to pitch to you.
Yes.
One.
Where are these? These on the...
I got them. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
You just sit there. You just give me your brain.
You're not coming from the live feed here?
No. One. So what do you think about the new combine drills? And to be honest, I don't even care about the rest of them.
I don't remember what they were.
What do you think about the fact that they have added end zone fades to the quarterback workouts?
Stupid. Well, how about the smoke route we talked about?
I don't understand the purpose of that either. But
so they're trying to time. I don't want to get into the velocity thing. I'm all for tracking velocity.
Right. We don't have time for you to go on a radar gun rant.
Yeah, in a good way.
And then the other
Speaking of rants, you sent me the message about my former teammate, Madison Bumgarner.
I didn't rant. I thought it was fantastic.
I have a rant.
Oh, you have?
I don't have a rant. I mean, I got Mad Bum stories.
That's the best story. No, you don't have anything better than that. That the dude on the quiet was a rodeo cowboy.
Well, this makes sense with the rumors that I had heard, which were very secretive back in 2007, which I feel like I can. You
just wasted the last decade of not putting it out there.
Madison Bumgarner was a first-round pick for the San Francisco Giants, like 10th overall,
right?
2007 draft, and
that's like 1,500 picks ahead of you.
By the 2018 By spring training of 2008, his first spring training, he was ready to quit baseball, and he was going to ask the Giants how much of his $2+ million signing bonus, may have been more at the time, how much of his signing bonus did he have to give back? Because they get two big lump sums. How much did he have to give back if he quit?
Well, all of it.
I mean, he had signed. He played in extended. We were extended spring training.
All right.
I mean, instructional league
teammates.
Almost all of it in 2007. He was ready to quit because he was just to
do what? He
was just probably to hit the circuit.
The rodeo circuit?
Yeah, he was just like a good old farm boy from North Carolina. That's why I think he was so good in the World Series. You don't even understand what he did in the World Series.
Uh-huh.
He would just pitch on no rest. After finishing games, he single-handedly won the 2014 World Series for the Giants. And he would just get out there, not worried about anything, just gets out there, throws the ball as hard as he can, throws a slider, and he's great. Like the opposite of me. I'm over there overthinking stuff, like what's my expected ERA? Like, oh, I'm doing great with guys in scoring position. This will never keep up. And he's just out there thinking of the next rodeo.
Yeah.
Good for him.
But
he was a unique character.
The Chiefs prohibited Patrick Mahomes from even playing pickup basketball at the Y, right? But Madison's out there riding around on bulls.
Mason Saunders.
On the quiet.
Yeah.
With a pseudonym, winning money. Like he's actually winning these things. Made $26,000 out of one of these. Ridiculous.
Good for him. That's what I win if I win the Cy Young.
Yeah?
Except it's like 2,000.
Yeah.
So, wow, look at him. Rodeo champion. And then the other quick story I have on him. Fastball slider guy, Sam. You need a third pitch.
Of course.
As a starter. He never had a changeup. So his first spring training, I gave him a new changeup grip.
Yeah?
He goes out there, goes into the spring training game against Ricky Weeks, pretty good second baseman for the Brewers, throws his changeup a couple times with my new grip, and the next day he was telling me, he's like, oh yeah, the changeup worked pretty good. Now, the rest of his career, never threw a changeup, was fastball slider the entire time, much like a Randy Johnson, power lefty. You go fastball, back foot slider against righties, down and away slider against lefties. That was his thing.
Right.
Didn't need the changeup, but I taught him the changeup grip, and it worked on that one pitch.
Huh.
And now he's a rodeo superstar. Who knew? Who knew?
No.
Anyway.
Nobody, apparently.
I'm just glad that you sent that story to me. You were impressed.
That's a great story.
We got 5 minutes to wrap it up. I want to talk corners.
Okay.
As we broke down the cornerback class last week, they all look like they've got pretty slick footwork and all that stuff. They all, I think a lot of the corners in this class can handle good route running receivers. You don't always see that. Again, you see a lot of length and guys have to beat you up at the line of scrimmage. What's the difference between the change of direction drills for corners and the 40 time this week? Because I think a lot of teams, they want to see that sub 7.3 cone, perhaps way better. I think the 3 cone is as valuable as the 40 when it comes to corners.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's composite, right? It's put it all together and get an idea of how good an athlete this guy is. You get weird cases like Trey Waynes, who could run the 40 really fast, but could not change direction to save his life, and that showed up on tape as well. Like, he's one of the only people ever to have a faster 40 time than a 3 cone. Like, it's absurd.
That was insane.
That just doesn't happen. But that showed up on tape. It confirmed everything you thought of. So I think generally with the corners, it's just trying to, again, piece all this together. And corner, I think, is specifically one of those positions where you're talking about thresholds, right? It's here is the speed. You need to run lower than, otherwise we have some problems. Because I don't care how good you are, if you run a 4.7 at corner, like that's an issue. If you're talking about Ruggs coming out here running a 4.2, you run 5/10, you run half a second slower over a 40. And 40 is not an that's a go route, right? So you're telling me at the end of the go route, you're going to be half a second slower than him. Now we have a real issue.
Yeah, that's a problem.
You cannot let that guy run off the line. Like, you have to get physical with him at that point. So I think corner is definitely an area where there's a threshold that you need to meet.
There's definitely something to football speed and all that stuff. And I know some people have studied, what the dots are doing, with the chips and the shoulder pads and how guys are actually running versus the 40 times. And it's not apples to apples, right? So fast guys do run fast, but you're talking about, so the example I would use is Jamel Dean for the Bucs when he got torched by the Seahawks. I referenced this a couple weeks ago. He looked like he was running a 4.8. Like, if you just watch this game, you're like, man, he looked slow. The poor dude was just burnt out and tired. He had to cover like 19 targets. DK Metcalf was running by him a couple times. Dean ran a 4.3 last year, but it was late in the game. He's tired. There's something to, like, well, you got to do it 60 plays a game, and when did you do it, and how often do you do it? There's endurance.
What happened on the 2 snaps
Your
before?
Madden endurance, bar meters going down. All that stuff matters within the course of a game. This is just a snapshot in time.
This is like best case scenario. There's a huge amount of like what happened in the 2 snaps previously. Like, if you just had to run deep 2 times for nothing, and now suddenly you've got to go one-on-one with a guy on a go, like, that's a problem.
There's something
wind sprints.
There's something to all that, but I think, again, I like the fact that we're measuring these numbers, and it's on the NFL teams to do their own research, to figure out how they want to weigh things, to figure out that the bench press is overrated. Who needs it? Let's get rid of it. I think that's really interesting.
The other thing that just quickly is worth pointing out is that we finally get like a book, an official height, weight on all these guys.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we've been
not the
dealing
fake stuff.
Yeah, we've been dealing with the college listed weights and listed heights, which are all, like
I am 6'10", by the way.
Right, there you go. Best case scenario, right? They're optimistically recorded or undersold, depending on what you want to actually achieve with that thing, right? But you get to the NFL, now we actually weigh them and measure them and see what we're talking about. So there are 6-foot players that are going to wind up being 5'10". And for me, it doesn't necessarily matter, right? There are teams out there that do care about that. And, again, corner is another example, right? The Seahawks, they don't care. If you're under 6'2", you're almost off their board.
Arm length, too. I mean, the 32-inch arms versus, anything below that, that's a big cutoff.
I know there are teams that will not even look at a corner if they're below 5'10", right? If you're 5'9" corner, forget it. You're not on the board, literally. We're not looking at you.
Those are the guys you mentioned. A lot of the 5'9" guys that grade well for us end up kind of like lurking around the league for a few years, and they're pretty good, but they do have limitations. They can't cover those number ones or those Julios. Safety Ashton Davis from Cal, too. I want to watch him run. He had some of the freakiest plays on film that was just like, wow, he got from point A to point B very quickly. So there's a lot of guys I just want to see confirm what we saw on film. And then there's going to be guys that come out of nowhere. Brashad Perryman came out of nowhere with a sub 4.3 a couple years ago at a huge size. And actually, when you went back on film, it's like, okay, he's got ball skills, and he was kind of running by people. So there'll be some people, and when you say, like, go back to the film, it's like, I probably just didn't get around to this guy yet. And then you see the speed, and it's like, all right, let's try to, match those two up as you go back. So there'll be plenty of those guys that come out of nowhere as well.
Is anybody going to be running the 40? Mike's going to be going to the fan thing, right? Mike, are you running the 40?
Hey, do we have a plan here, Michael?
Are you running the 40?
Michael from social media.
Yeah? Nice.
You're supposed to be getting us all set up at the fan experience, right?
All you have to beat is Renner's 4.8. Like, that's a pretty low bar.
I want to race Eric. Can I race Eric this week?
With his gimpy leg?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I could beat him.
What do you think you'd run a 40 in now?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Let's start with 5, because that's the number it will begin with.
Yeah, so I think at my best, I ran like a 1.8.10.
Don't give me your 10. What did you run?
And then you project that out. I was probably in the 4.8.
Just extrapolate it out.
I was in the 4.8s. Oh, you just worry about the start, and then it's just
You
just
were
fly.
in the 4.8s.
Oh, yeah, I think I was in the 4.8s in my prime. 4.8s at about 270. Yeah.
All right.
Because I was working out with NFL tight ends. All right, most of them didn't make it, but
Yeah.
NFL caliber tight ends who were running similar 10s.
Huh.
And they probably would have been 4.8,
I don't know
4.9
if you
guys.
can just scale it up that way. I think you need the next 30 yards to have...
I'm a long strider. You carry it out. I mean, I'm like 5'2". 5'2"? Think I do 5'2"?
Now?
Yeah. You see me, like when I turn on the jets on the court,
Yeah.
I run away from people.
Do you? Who?
Feels like it. Feels like
I mean, it might be a chance. There's a reasonable chance that people just stop running after
I
you.
don't want to talk about it. I'm not ready.
You're not.
I'm not ready for the 40. No, I'm not running
But
the 40.
Michael's going to be running it, so you're good.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch him.
I think
we know Renner's 4.8.
Right. I think he can take Renner's 4.8.
I'm looking forward to it. Big week. I'm just trying to, we're trying to network. We got a lot of stuff going on. I've got, the big PFF IQ product we'll be selling within the next year. I got to get some people on board. How to use the best of PFF stuff to make every decision within the organization. So there you go.
All right.
We got a hard out here.
Yeah.
Podcast just keep rolling all day. So we're off to the Combine. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll be back later in the week. We might have to record on Friday.
Okay.
I believe. I think the pod might be a little bit later in the week, but we got the live show. We'll see you guys at Tin Roof, 7 o'clock this Thursday night.
The other clarification for that is that it's not going to be like streamed live or anything. So we will be recording it. We'll figure out how much of that we can put
Like
out
in
after the
person.
fact. Yeah.
It's a show.
If you're there in the Tin Roof, you'll see it. If you're not in the Tin Roof, we can't make any promises.
That's right.
We'll try and put stuff out after the fact.
We'll try to give you the best stuff after, if we can. All right. Everybody enjoy Combine Week.
Man, we need
see you
a
later.
button.